Welcome to Mental Wealth, the podcast to invest in your mind. Here I will help you make sense of your mind and behaviours, giving you the tools to have your best life. There is so much to share, so let's get into this episode and explore another great topic. So, welcome to episode 16. I am delighted that you're here, and I'm also delighted to say that I have got a very special guest, and we are going to be exploring what is potentially quite a difficult topic, but I know with Naomi it's going to be much easier. So welcome, Naomi. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. My name is Naomi Victoria. I wear a multitude of hats, actually, but I'm really passionate about mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I do a lot of public speaking. I'm also an author of my own book, Love You, Love Your Life, and I'm the founder of Personally Positive, positive personalised products and feel good fashion.
So it is, like you say, a multitude of things, but the essence of it all is at the heart of, isn't it, people feeling good about themselves and finding ways to feel positive and happy.
Absolutely. So my product range was developed really around supporting self-belief and self-love, and the little things that we can do in the everyday, from putting on a sweatshirt to lighting a candle to drinking out of a mug with an affirmation on it. And I'm hugely passionate and a big believer in affirmations. So I've been on my own huge self-development journey over the last 10 years. And the affirmation in particular has played a huge part in my life, as lots of other tools have. I've got a whole abundance in my little toolbox. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and it's lovely to be able to bring all of that to life into things that I've used along my own path as well.
Yeah. And that resonates with me so much, because for me, my journey has also been interesting, difficult at times, but knowing that the combination of things that really helps us, because I think that's something that we need to remind ourselves, is it's not one quick switch that you can flick. It's so many different things. And then to be able to share that with others is so important. And here we are creating this podcast today for that exact reason.
Yeah. And I think it's exactly that. I think in terms of, in my book, I've got a big section on life tools. And for me, I've written it in kind of a pick and mix fashion, because what works for one person will not necessarily work for another. And I think there's, particularly with social media and things that happen online, is there can be a lot of pressure sometimes to kind of follow one path. Like, for example, journaling. I love journaling, but I also know some people that absolutely hate journaling. It doesn't work for them because they're just not, it doesn't resonate with them. And then almost feeling additional pressure to feel that they're not good enough because they can't journal, which is actually it's just not their thing that lights them up and helps support them on their journey to kind of like to work with themselves, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it's something definitely to reiterate, is that what one size doesn't fit all, and we do need to have the things that are right for us. But I think one of the things I often notice about people is they'll make that instant idea or decision in their mind that doesn't work for them. And I think one of the things I'm often saying is try it, because you don't know, do you? Once you know it's not for you, brilliant. That's not the one for you, and there'll be something else. But, sometimes people hold themselves back to sort of with that instant, oh no, I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. I don't fancy that. And actually, you never know, because I know some of the things that I do now that keep me feeling strong. I probably would have thought it was a bit nah. And now I'm like, oh no, I get it.
I totally agree with that. So I've actually got a bit of a personal story around meditation. So I used to think that meditation wasn't for me because I have a really busy mind. I can't switch it off and all of that. And actually, a good friend of mine, I was actually out there last night. She came to my house probably 8-9 years ago now to teach me how to meditate. And I now don't meditate how she taught me to meditate, because that worked for her and works for lots of people. But for me, I don't like to just meditate on my own. I'll either use an app to do that, or a YouTube video or something. But very often I find like walking in nature really meditative, or I do breath work, I do the cold water therapy, and all of that for me is a form of meditation. So I think it is, yeah, not dismissing it because it's got a term or a phrase that might think it's just not for me. There's loads of different ways that you can kind of do stuff and adapt stuff to your life to support your own mental health.
Definitely. And I think one of the things that we're going to touch on today is that deep mental health challenge, when we really feel like we've hit rock bottom. And I know you've got a bit to share with us, Naomi. But I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of is when we are in that space, we can't see any good in lots of things. It's so common, isn't it, to actually not be able to see, oh, well, it's instant, that will work for me, because we're in that space. And it is about just that very gentle pushing ourselves just to have a go, just to get somebody else to help you have a go, a bit like your story, or find whatever it is that is right for you, rather than doing nothing. Because I think that becomes the biggest challenge, isn't it, is that we don't do anything. So let's just see what you think about that first.
So for me, it's about our self-responsibility in understanding ourselves and actually finding things that work with ourselves that can help us shift in those tougher times. So I know lots of people have navigated lots of things in life. I personally have had lots of adversity that I've navigated through, a lot of grief, a lot of loss, and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, it's about my tools, and the work that I've done with myself have definitely supported me to get through those tougher times, as has been reaching out and getting help and support. So, you know, I have worked with Reiki healers, I've worked with counsellors, I've now thrown myself in cold water, which really supports me. So I know when I'm not immune to all of this. I have had really, despairing thoughts myself in the past, and nobody is immune to feeling rock bottom or feeling suicidal, having thoughts of suicidal ideation. I know this is a tough subject to often talk about, but we're not immune, and none of us know what is going to get thrown at us this afternoon, let alone tomorrow, and how we're going to be able to navigate through that. So I think when we can learn some little tools and things to help ourselves, then that becomes our go-to in the tougher times. And that's really what I like to share. I like to share the little things that we can do that can really start to shift the mood. And it's not about overwhelming you with a ton of stuff to do, and that you've got to, I talk about positivity being a choice, actually. But I'm not talking about toxic positivity. And toxic positivity is a thing where people say, to get a grip and put a smile on your face or all of that kind of stuff, when actually, if you're not feeling that, it is about sitting and honouring where you are, how you are feeling, but also understanding the small things that you can do for yourself. And it could just be the little things like, just going out into the garden and studying a plant, looking at a leaf, watching. I remember in some of my darker times, like literally just watching a little bird come and landing in the garden and really noticing that and focusing on the gratitude for those very little things, whether that's making yourself a cup of tea and just sitting, wrapping yourself up, whatever it is, in those moments. And for me, again, affirmation has played a huge part in that. So, writing yourself little affirmations that you are enough in the everyday as you are. One of my big, huge light bulbs in life wasn't that long ago, actually. And I was walking around a lake with my friend and having a whole conversation about self-love, which is something I talk about, self-belief, self-acceptance, self-love. And really the permission to love the dark side of yourself. So we all have shadow sides. We all have things that we don't particularly like about ourselves, or things that are happening in life that we don't particularly like. And it's about embracing all of that. And that's enough, because we all have that. And I think particularly with pressure with social medias and the need to kind of, comparisonitis and all the stuff that goes on with looking at other people's so-called perfect lives, we can start to judge ourselves a lot, and we can start to feel more crap, just like not great about ourselves, because we're trying to compare to other people. And once you can learn to kind of unpeel some of those layers and really start to accept yourself as you are, warts and all, you know what I mean? That was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the strongest things that became a thing that people used to say is that it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't. I mean, when I look back to some of my darker times, it was before the internet, so before social media. So we weren't doing anywhere near as much comparing. We didn't know the amount of people because we were literally just all with whoever we were with. Yeah. And in that moment, you didn't know that everyone else was possibly having similar or a different experience, obviously, because we're all unique, but similar things. Yeah. And you did think it was only you, and that it wasn't right to be. And you used to look around literally at the people in the street, I guess, and think, well, they all look happy. It must just be me. So in a way, we kind of know more about the fact it's okay to not be okay.
And actually, social media is brilliant for that. So, you know, I talk about the media in both ways. Like, it has kind of like negative impact in terms of people comparing and all the polished kind of Instagram stuff. I think we are breaking down some of those barriers now, and people are starting to show up more authentically as they are. But it's not sometimes a comfortable thing to do. It can feel very vulnerable to do that. But equally, the awareness around, you know, people struggling, statistics around, you know, suicide and mental health. And I think there is a lot of positive work being done, and actually a lot of visibility for people to be able to reach out and get support. And I know I talk about suicide a lot online and suicide prevention. I've got my own personal story around that. And the minute I put any post around that out on social media, I do get people in my inbox saying, you know, I've got my own personal story, or my husband's struggling, or my son's struggling, and I'm able to signpost. So that's one thing on my personallypositive.com website. We do have a signposting section for those people who are needing support, guidance, help. And you don't have to, you know, I think there's a bit of a misconception that you don't have to be, you know, feeling suicidal to reach out and get support. It is, if you are worried about somebody else, if you're just having a low day, you can reach out and get support. If you have somebody you know who is struggling, you equally can use one of the helplines. So I'm in a corporate partnership with Papyrus, which is the prevention of suicide in the young. And they have Hopeline, which are incredible. And you can, you know, ring Hopeline and they will guide you through. And, you know, if you are struggling with, you know, a loved one, a family, a friend, or anything else, they will support you as well. And I think that sometimes people think, I don't want to ring because it's not me. But you can ring the Samaritans, you can ring Papyrus Hopeline. There's lots of, you know, Young Minds have got a helpline as well. So I think it is about spreading awareness around that don't ever feel that you can't reach out and get help. So you know, I have used those lines myself, and they are incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's right that we talk about these things. You know, this is why this podcast is important to me, that we can just do a pause and think about a certain topic. It might be you that's listening that's thinking, I do need to reach out more. It might be, like you say, you've got someone else that you feel worried about. Because I think one of the things that is so important is to know that by doing nothing, unless you are doing something nurturing yourself, so we don't always have to reach out, but doing something is important, isn't it? Because the doing nothing is always the challenge.
Yeah, and I think it is that. I think that the doing something for yourself is absolutely key. And, you know, like on a daily basis, I have my own routine. So I'm sitting here at my little dressing table stroke home office. And this morning, I have routines that I get up and I take the dog for a walk, and I journal, and I pull my cards. I've got a candle lit in the background. It's actually got an affirmation on it. And it is just, for me, just lighting a match. I've actually got some, can show you. Obviously, they won't see on the podcast, but I've got some rainbow matches here.
Oh, lovely.
And it is about me taking the time, you know, just actually to light a match and to think about myself, think about my day, and to light it up and to actually focus on the light. I talk a lot about focusing on light. And when we are experiencing some of the darker times, it is we only have that spark of light within us, and it's about us connecting with that spark of light, however small that may be. And sometimes it may only be a tiny flicker, but it is about remembering that we do have that light within and anchoring onto that. And actually we can shift through, and tomorrow will look like a completely different day. And I know it's difficult when you're in that darkness to kind of to be able to see beyond that, but I talk a lot about, I use the phrase hope all of the time, about having hope. And hope for me stands for hold on, pain ends. So when you are in some of those darker times, how you can anchor into that. And I have various tools, but I use the hand quite a lot when talking about hope, because you have your hand with you all of the time, wherever you go. So
nice. Yeah, I think it's so important, like you say, for us to just talk about it here, wherever this goes, and whoever passes this podcast on, if somebody is struggling, but to know that it can happen to anybody. It is okay. And there are lots and lots of different things that we can do to help ourselves, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, if that's your thing. And I think for me, one of the biggest things that I talk about a lot is understanding the mind and how we process things. You know, thinking about your example of, even if you're having a dark day, to just do the action of striking that match and looking at that candle and looking at what that brings. Your mind is your number one fan. So it'll go along with whatever it is that you are talking and thinking about. So if you're looking at a candle and you just focus in on that, your mind will just do that. It'll just, the other thoughts might come, but you can choose to just focus on the candle. And I think for me, for us all to understand a bit more about the functioning of the mind, that's why I wrote my books, is to help us understand our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions, and then be able to make a sense of what's working well and what isn't working for us. Yeah. And I think it's so important, isn't it, just to remember that your mind is trying to protect you. If you are feeling super low and there's something really challenging going on for you, it will be putting you into that, no, I'm not going, I can't do it, I need to stay safe. But obviously in that space, that's where we can feel very alone, very lonely, very unsettled.
Yeah. And I think the thoughts are very overwhelming then as well, aren't they? So, you know, as I said before, I felt that myself. I openly talk about that. I have my own story, and I do talk about that. So I lost my brother in 2016 to suicide. He passed away on his, he was just 31, he has very much become the wind beneath my wings with everything that I do. I went on to train as a suicide intervention first aider to sort of educate myself and to be able to create the change. And I felt like I needed to educate myself so that I could talk confidently about suicide prevention and know what I was talking about with that. And I have been involved in suicide intervention since then. But just after I lost my brother, it was actually just a couple of weeks after, I really felt that despair myself. And I rang the Samaritans, and they were absolutely incredible. At that point, I don't think I had enough in my toolkit. So I had started my self-development journey, and I went straight away and had Reiki, and I had kind of tried to reach out to a counsellor with complex grief and get some help and support there. But I felt it. So I can empathise and understand people who are in that space. And actually it came quite suddenly. So, you know, I was kind of okay in the day, and then all of a sudden it started. You know, I didn't feel great, but I did pick up the phone. However, there are so many tools that I've learned since then that really, like the candle, actually, my candle is, I have candles on all of the time. But light is, you know, anchoring into light, it is a beautiful thing to do. Mm. And also somebody once said to me, which I'm going to share with you, if that's okay, yep, is to actually, if you're ever in that moment of despair, is to actually look at your hand and to really study your hand. When you start to look at your hand and you start to look at all the lines on your hand and the detail in your hands. And she said to me, you know, like, you were born with these hands, and they have been with you for a lifetime, and just think about all the things that your hands have done, and that you learnt to crawl on your hands, and that you learnt to feed yourself, and that you learnt to hold each other's hands and have connection, and all those people that you've held hands with. And that you've learnt, I started to think about my children and kind of the things that I've done with my hands with them. I've learnt to write, I've learnt to read, I've learnt to clap my hands, and they're incredible, aren't they, really, when you think about it. We actually anchor into that, and you have, so I use affirmation around hands all the time. So I'll say, like, write your affirmations on your hands that you are, I've got in my book here, it says, I am loved, I am worthy, I've got this, just breathe. You could actually just sit and write on your hands, or study your hands, and just think about all of those things and how amazing they are and how amazing you are, because actually it's all of you, and it is about connecting into that. So I call it my hand of hope, my hold on pain ends, because I really think that we do have, it's sometimes we always have them with us, don't we?
Yeah. I love the simplicity of it, and yet the depth of it, that that just that exercise of, if you're feeling, if you can't sleep because you're feeling so low, or you're feeling just you can't get moving, like you say, just giving yourself a bit of purpose around, what have these hands done for me? What have they brought me? I love that simplicity, and yet it is super powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's just have a quick sort of summary, but a little thoughts on how we can kind of help people. I'm really interested in making sure that everybody's got something tangible. So obviously, I love your exercise. We've already got maybe with your hand or your exercises. One of the things I think would be good for us to touch on is maybe some of those warning signs, because obviously you and I are both trained in this kind of work, and helping people realize that two things for me, it would be nice to highlight. One is a couple of the warning signs, what maybe that you would like to share with people, but also to know that I hear a lot of people say they're worried about going back to a place when it's been really low, and they spend time worrying about that action of just being back in that place. One of the things I often talk about is that alarm system in your own body, in your own mind. So if you have been at your rock bottom, you technically will have little alarm bells going off. And for me, it's helping people see those a bit sooner, so that you can reach out, so that you can start to do the things that maybe have got you to a better place. Because we all know we quite often have stopped doing some of the things that work for us. So when you look back and think, oh, well, it's because I'm not doing my going out into the garden and spending a bit, or whatever your thing is. I think it's so important to remember that if you have been at rock bottom, your mind will be giving you little alarm bells way before you will fall back there, if you are paying attention. And that's the critical thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it is about listening in. We talked about tools before. Journaling is a huge way that I listen into myself, because it enables me to zone out of kind of life, if you like. I go into my little bubble, as does I do cold showers. So I do breath work and cold showers, those sorts of things. They are massive tools for me. But again, it goes back to what's right for an individual, doesn't it? But I think even it's not about not getting overwhelmed with thinking we've got to put loads of stuff in. It's one thing. So, if just literally sitting in nature for 5-10 minutes will help you anchor in, but living in the present. So not worrying, trying your best not to worry about the past or the future, and just going, what is it I need to do today? And I have spent many days where I just go, literally, I just now I'm going to go and make a cup of tea, and now I'm going to go and do this, because actually the thought of moving forward or looking at some of the past has been too overwhelming in that moment. So I think it is the here and now of what can I do just in this moment to make me feel a little bit better right now.
Yeah, and I think it is trying to get out of your head, because in your head at that time, you've got, like you say, you're either worrying about the future because you can't see yourself moving forward, or you're holding on to memories of the past, which are hurtful and painful and distressing. And actually, when you are making that cup of tea, or you are sitting in the garden or you are doing something, it's about doing that wholeheartedly. So if you've got that hot cup of coffee in your hand, feel it. That is the bit that gives you the freedom in that moment. And then, yes, your thoughts will come back. We know that. But for me, it's about helping people get into that practice of just being present to that thing that you're doing and try and slow those thoughts down.
And I think actually document it. So when you are feeling in a good place and you have been working with some of these tools, I have in my book a life buoy. And it is about, navigating some of the stormier times, of anchoring into your life buoy and writing a list of the things that do help you shift. Because sometimes when you are feeling overwhelmed, your brain will not be able to identify those things that make you feel better, or you'll just literally go, I can't do it, it's too noisy, it's too much, my stress container's full, whatever it is, that I just can't process that. But if you've got evidence there that you've written down that how these things made you feel, or just those literally go-to things in a little life, I've got a picture in my book that's like a life buoy of like documenting what the things that are going to help in that day, and just being able to anchor back in and to go into those.
I love that. That reminds me of the journal that I made for people. So it's a 3-month journal. It's a daily sheet that you would fill in. So it's got set your intentions for the day. It's not your to-do list. And then look at there's 3 little boxes for your wins at the end of each day. And I know that 2 things. One, by getting into the habit of thinking like this, it will help move you from wherever you are if you're stuck. And secondly, if you have had some days where you felt great and you've noticed that you've done some of these things, all our little bits that are important to you, and then maybe you have a day or a few days where you've dropped, you will be able to spot very quickly what's missing.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, is an offer that I've got available for people, and it's for 3 months. And again, the idea is you can rate your day in terms of, I think there's little love hearts. You can rate your day and you can start to see what the patterns are. What is it that's keeping you feeling good? And what is it that you need to do?
So valuable, because you can, stuff to look back on is amazing. I did something similar during my divorce. I lost my business and went through my divorce at the same time, and I found it all really overwhelming. And I did a similar thing, not as amazing as your 3-month plan sounds epic. I wish I'd had it then, but I did just used to journal every day, like and being able to look back on how far I'd come was then just anchored the evidence that actually you can do it. Look how far you've come already. And I still do that now, when stuff hits, when like it does in life, we forget sometimes how far we've come and what we've been able to navigate. And actually, if we could navigate through that, we can actually do this. And I think it is building that evidence base. And actually, sometimes when we've got it written down in black and white, it hugely helps, doesn't it, to be able to go back. Do you know what?
Definitely. And when you're writing it down, you're giving it an importance, you're connecting your head, so the thoughts about it, your heart, and then down your hand, and I love the fact that you've now given me this anchor that my hand is hope, and it might, writing about what's painful, it will help it pass, or just being able to notice, what am I doing too much of? What am I not doing enough of? What do I need to stop doing altogether? These things, because if you document it, I mean, things like social media, like we say, it can be amazing. You can look at lovely things. But if you are noticing that you're on social media and it is dropping your mood, then if you've documented that you've spent a few hours on social media, and then you can make the link between, actually, I now feel rubbish, what you need to do.
Absolutely. And it is about flipping that up, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's just have a quick 2 minutes on the sort of some of the warning signs that you would like to highlight, Naomi, for people.
Okay, so for me, in terms of it's really hard for me to give advice, number one, because every case is really, really individual.
Sure.
And I would never want to be kind of go like, these signs are always there, because they're not. Very often the signs can be very, very minuscule. For me, there are kind of 2 really big different sides to suicide. So there's kind of like a lot of people who plan it, who are in depression, who meticulously plan what they're going to do, and they feel that, that they're going to alleviate everybody else, and like that side of things. And then there's also a side where it's very in the moment, so it might be a period of time, obviously, low mood, may have been in there for a period of time, and there may have been some suicide ideation before, but actually something just happens in life that just sends it over, of just like, literally, I can't cope with this pain anymore, and I need, they don't want to die, they just want to not be in the pain that they are in. So they are quite different, and the signs are quite different. So this is obviously really generalizing in those two sorts of areas, but there are things like, if it's planned, people may give possessions away. So they may go to people that they love and give possessions and things away because they know that it's actually going to happen, and they may come and say goodbye. Behavior might be slightly different in that. So they are subtle signs, because people can do that in the everyday, but those are two quite prevalent things that people do feedback. I think in the moment, I think the where people say it's a cry for help, it's not a cry for help. Any threat or any comment made needs to be taken seriously, and it's not. I think there's kind of like a myth that if somebody says they're going to do it, they never do it. That is not the truth. That is, and I think it's, and I still hear that quite a lot of, that seems to people think that, if you say you're not going to do it, that's not the case. I think in the moment it is just listening to language. If somebody has reached out, of just sort of watching behavior and, language and taking things seriously. So one of the things that really surprised me when I did my suicide intervention training was one of the first ports of call in the intervention process is to ask somebody whether they are thinking of self-harming or taking their own life. There is kind of a consensus that if you say that to somebody, that you might be planting the seed for them to go and take their own life, and that is absolutely not the case. It is really about giving them permission to be able to. They are not going to necessarily come to you and say, like, I'm feeling suicidal, or had thoughts about taking my own life. But if you say it first, it opens up that permission for the conversation to open those communication lines. So that was it's a hard thing. I found it even hard in my training, but it is a really valuable thing to be able to understand. So the signs are small, but the signs are very often there, and it's not till afterwards, obviously, that you kind of look back and go, oh yeah, there was that, and there was this, and you start to piece things together. But they are often small. But my big overriding message would be, never take anything as if it's a cry for help, or that we'll just ignore that, because the result on the other side, I have been involved. I've had police, and that's the other thing. If you are concerned about somebody and you can't get to them, ring the police. The police will go round and do a welfare check. I have had, I've called the police to do welfare checks on people, and thankfully they have been okay. I would always rather that than the other, because actually you can't change the other. So it is just about being aware and not feeling, oh, they'll be all right. Actually ring the police and let the police be involved in that decision-making process, or get some support, speak to Helpline, speak to Samaritans, say you're worried about somebody and what should they do, and use their guidance process in that as well.
And I think just talking about it like that is so important, isn't it? Because if you do feel worried about somebody and you feel like you're the only one who feels in that space, or they might have shared something and you feel like, I mean, for me as a therapist, the times that people have said things to me, and I have to do something with that, because otherwise it's all on me, and that feels absolutely massive, doesn't it? So I think
it's about being able to share that responsibility, because it is a huge responsibility to hold. And I think it is about sharing that responsibility with somebody else to kind of go, what do we do in this situation?
Yeah, brilliant. And it is a difficult topic. We've said that at the beginning, but I think having a space to just talk about it, for people to listen in and hear that it is something that we should be talking about. It is something that people can get the right help, whatever that might look like for them. But obviously, as we've shared today, there are so many things, small things. And I'm always saying, what's the one small thing that you can do today to help yourself? And it is, again, I'm often talking about it being like a jigsaw. You know what you might know what your life would like to look like. And there's lots and lots and lots of little pieces. Yeah. But how do we do a jigsaw? We do a jigsaw one piece at a time. And it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so true.
It is so true, because I think you touched on it, Naomi, and I'm often talking about it. You can feel overwhelmed with all of the things that you could or should be doing. And actually that
puts the pressure on, and then you go, I'm not doing all of the things. It's a bit like if you want to lose weight and you think like, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to, and then you fall off one thing, and then you start to feel bad about yourself because you've not done that, because you put the pressure on. Whereas if you just go, it's just those one small things. And I love the analogy of a jigsaw. It's like the building blocks, isn't it? The more you kind of build up and do stuff, and not beating yourself up if you don't, because actually that works negatively. It is just really about doing what's right for you. But the small, I love, for me, everything lies in the little things. Everything I create and I talk about is that of looking to the small things.
And you do create beautiful small things too.
Thank you.
So we're going to put all of your places that people can find you in the show notes. But is there anything you would like to talk about or highlight that you have on offer?
So for me, it would be just talking about the products, actually. So the products I sell are around how you feel in the everyday. So from putting on a sweatshirt to how it not only feels in terms of quality, but the little hidden messages that I put in there. So they might have an affirmation on the sleeve or hidden inside the hood. And I do a hug in the hoodie, which actually is designed to feel like you're having a hug. And so many people, in fact, someone messaged me yesterday to say I need another one because I'm not taking it off. It needs to go in the wash. Because they have thumb holes and cowl neck. It's designed to make you feel like you are safe, protected, loved, enough. One of them has an affirmation that actually says, I am beautiful, loved, worthy, strong, on the sleeve. And my new Jolly Brollies, of which you have one.
I do. I love them. So yes.
The rainiest August on history, I think, I launched the Jolly Brolly, which currently is a rainbow umbrella, and it has affirmations or positive messages. So without rain there would be no rainbows. And yeah, lots of different quotes and things in there. I'm actually just doing a black one that's it's not out yet, but it says in silver, the sky's the limit, with all silver stars inside and things. So we hand cut all of those graphics. I don't know that you know that. So
no, I didn't know.
It's going back to the hands again, isn't it? It's quite a mindful activity. So when we're in the office, I'm a big believer in mindfulness as well, but we actually hand cut all of the vinyl, we hand press it all ourselves. So when we're actually creating the products, there's a lot of feeling and meaning that goes into that as well, because for me it's about that's really powerful for me in terms of the energy and the love that goes into every product that we create. For you to kind of pass that on. So on the rainiest of days, you can put the brolly up and feel a bit of sunshine and positivity.
Nice. I love it. Oh, well, I hope everyone has a good look at your website and follows you on socials.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this space with me, because it is such an important topic, and I've loved sharing this conversation with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Alison.
Thanks everyone for listening in. In our next episode next week, we've got Charlotte Carter, and we've got all sorts we're going to be talking about. So I hope you can join me then. Thank you for listening and sharing in this episode of Mental Wealth. Remember, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. My last question to you is, what is the one small thing that you can take action on from this episode? Message me on Instagram or through our website with questions you'd like me to explore. You'll find the links in the show notes. I'll be back with more tools and tips to make sense of your mind in the next episode. In the meantime, be kind to yourself. Bye for now.